Sturgeon is a fascinating fish I talk about a lot, but today we're going to discuss one very specific thing. Why so many beginners, those individuals who initially decided to enter this particular business, have really truly failed with sturgeon. Even though the margins seem great, the selling price is excellent, the technology is clear and well known, feed is available, stocking material is available, basically everything you need to raise this type of fish is there. Nevertheless, fish farming as an industry has its own unique nuances, and today we're going to talk about the potential pitfalls and challenges of successfully raising sturgeon. What absolutely essential things should every beginner who plans to enter this demanding business keep firmly in mind? Hello everyone, my name is Anton Pelcher, I'm an engineer and I've been building fish farms for over 10 years. Alright, let's get started. And the first thing is that not all sturgeon are equally suitable for farming. There are almost 30 distinct species of sturgeon found throughout the world, including the sterlet, the beluga, and various other types like the Russian and Siberian sturgeon. In short, there are actually a lot of them. But if you truly want to do more than just simply keep an aquarium or grow them decoratively and instead set up a large-scale industrial sturgeon farm, then far from all of them will be entirely suitable for your specific needs. Why is that? The first significant reason is simply the inherent lack of readily available stock. That is to say, if you genuinely want to work with some truly exotic sturgeon species, you might simply not be able to find sufficient ready stock for that particular type of fish. Next, it is important to keep in mind that different sturgeon species mature for caviar at varying rates. For example, if you want to raise sturgeon for caviar, I wouldn't recommend working with beluga, because even in RAS conditions, beluga matures for caviar only after about 8 to 10 years. You'll just grow significantly older before your precious beluga is truly ready for caviar production, unless of course raising beluga specifically for its highly prized caviar is your original well thought out strategy. If you're not getting into this deliberately, with a very clear and precise understanding of precisely why you absolutely need to raise beluga for caviar, since its exquisite caviar is universally known as the most expensive and sought after. In all other cases, I would recommend you consider simpler options that mature for caviar in 4 to 5 years and sometimes even 2 to 3, such as sterlet. Growth parameters. It's very important to understand that different sturgeon species have different growth parameters. And for example, the sterlet species grows more slowly, while the beluga is indeed the fastest growing. So, if you plan to grow market fish, you can choose classic sturgeon species such as the Siberian or the Russian sturgeon, or popular hybrids like the Bester or the Sterble. Or you can choose the absolute fastest one, the magnificent beluga. It truly gains market weight much faster than all the other sturgeon species, but it's critically important to understand that it's a bit harder to reliably find stocking material for beluga than for other sturgeon species. Sturgeon caviar does not appear automatically, it requires significant effort. This is a very common question I get. Anton, if I build a sturgeon farm for 100 tons, how much caviar will I get? The answer is none, zero. Why? Because if you are raising fish for commercial sale, they are typically sold after about a full year or a year and a half at most, and they simply don't even have sufficient time to fully mature for producing valuable caviar. And if you want to carefully obtain caviar, you need to free up some of the tanks, or build separate tanks, separate RS systems, and keep a broodstock there, which will spend 3, 4, 5, even 7 years maturing for caviar, and you will get caviar from this broodstock. But it's important to understand that in this case, it will take up separate areas where you won't be able to raise market fish. Moreover, to raise fish for caviar, you will need separate units, such as a wintering unit and a spawning unit. In other words, these are separate systems with their own tanks, where very precise temperature control is maintained. And when you raise sturgeon for caviar, you need to place them in the wintering unit for 2 months, gradually lower the temperature, keep them there for 2, sometimes even 3 months, then gradually raise the temperature again. So these are completely separate systems where your fish will be kept. At that time, there will be no market fish kept in these systems. Even if you have raised excellent market fish, or even caviar, the next issue and hidden pitfall you may encounter with sturgeon is the limited market for sales. Well, in fact, sturgeon is a traditional dish for festive tables, and this is both its advantage and its drawback. First of all, it has been well known for a long time, meaning people love it, know it, and want it. This is undoubtedly a plus for sales. But at the same time, sturgeon is considered a festive type of fish, and far from everyone eats it, mostly only on special occasions. In other words, there are indeed very few people who regularly consume sturgeon just like that for their daily breakfast, lunch, and dinner meals. That is precisely why the total market volume for sturgeon sales in the CS is, well, probably significantly less than 10,000 tons of commercial product per year, which is really not that much at all. Compare this, for example, with red fish. The overall production and sales volume is about 200,000 tons annually. So that's a very significant difference. And it's also very important to keep in mind that in smaller towns, where the overall population is quite low, sturgeon consumption is even significantly lower, and you truly need to be very careful if you plan to open a farm somewhere quite far away, where there are absolutely no settlements or any more or less large cities with a population of well over 1 million, to which you could potentially supply your valuable products. If there are only 3 small villages and 2 tiny hamlets around you, I'm afraid you might indeed have significant problems selling sturgeon in that particular remote location. Do not make the pools deeper than 1 meter. The thing is, sturgeon is a bottom-dwelling fish, and traditionally it is raised in pools with a depth of 1 meter 20 centimeters as a dry reserve, and 1 meter as the water depth. Larvae and fry are raised with even lower water levels. That's why, traditionally, fish farmers measure sturgeon stocking density in kilograms per square meter, not per cubic meter. So if you are considering setting up a sturgeon farm and mistakenly believe you can simply create very deep pools, perhaps 3 or even 5 meters deep, that is a significant misconception. Even if you were to fill it with a substantial 10 meters of water, you would still achieve essentially the same productivity per square meter or almost identical results as you would with just a single meter of depth. If you want to sell processed fish, for example, by carefully smoking it or meticulously salting the precious caviar, you will definitely need a dedicated processing facility and a formal declaration of conformity. You can no longer sell processed fish as simple agricultural products. Therefore, in addition to a veterinary certificate, you will need a declaration of conformity. To obtain this, you must truly have all the very necessary conditions for properly processing the fish, that is, an appropriate facility and suitable equipment indeed. So keep in mind, to avoid potential problems in the future, if you want to sell not only live fish, but also engage in its processing, you should definitely consider setting up a full-fledged fish processing facility with all the necessary documentation. And what pitfalls and problems have you encountered when raising sturgeon? Be sure to share your experiences in the comments. If you enjoyed this, give it a like. This was Anton Pelcher with my channel about how to raise fish and make good money from it. See you